Well, as our Hwang Ji-hye reported, Korea, the world's 15th largest economy, might join the 12-nation Trans-Pacific Partnership trade talks aimed at slashing trade barriers among nations of the Asia-Pacific. Now, that makes up about 40% of the world's economy. Sounds good, but the negotiations have been mired in controversy over lack of transparency and slowed by conflicting interests of the negotiating countries. But those are some of the bigger, chunky aspects, and to shed some light on this topic, we're joined by Dr. Byoung-joo, head of KL&P Consulting and our most reliable commentator here on Arirang TV. Good to have you with us again, Dr. Kim.
Thank you.
Well, first of all, it was last Friday, so this is quite fresh. The government showed interest in participating in the TPP agreement negotiation. What's the intention behind this move?
The intention behind this move, there are several, but one of the key things that we see behind this move is the nervousness about the fact that Japan has jumped into the bandwagon right now, the moving bandwagon, by the way, the kind of accelerating bandwagon here. The thing is, however, expressing interest does not mean that Korea has actually declared that it's going to participate in the negotiation itself. There are different steps here. Expressing interest first, and then, preliminary bilateral talks with the existing member that are participating right at this point. And then after that, a country can declare its intention to participate. And after that, the final point of this starting the participation itself ends with the existing members' approval of this new entrance. So we have several steps to go through here. So Korea has not declared that it will join. It just expressed the interest. So there is a big difference. And tomorrow, starting from tomorrow and for the next several days in Indonesia, Bali, there will be a WTO ministerial conference. And there, Korea will be having active talks with the representatives of these countries that are participating in TPP negotiation. And through that process, Korea will get to find out much more details about what actually is being discussed here and whether it's Korea's best interest to participate or not. I mean, we do believe it's almost like 90% certain, and perhaps a little bit more, that Korea will be participating. But to be exact about it, there will be, as you mentioned, the lack of transparency, and there could be some kind of hidden facts that could actually come up, in theory at least. So it's not official yet that Korea is participating, but because Japan is participating, Korea has made its move. And interesting thing is, even China has expressed its interest back in, I think it was June, when Xi Jinping was visiting Washington, that it may be actually interested in participating as well. So this is a bandwagon that's moving away and then accelerating, and if you want to lose it, we might regret it. That's why Korea has expressed its interest.
Okay, so it's sort of like a three-way Mexican standoff between Korea, China, and Japan.
There we go.
Who's going to join,
Familiar
who's not going to join.
story on the trade side.
Right.
Yep.
Well, is it safe to say that compared with a Korea-China FTA, trade pacts like that, the TPP might offer something more to Korea?
It's possible. I mean, if you're talking about just China, Korea, Japan, trilateral FTA, this is much bigger for sure. And also other kinds of FTAs being talked about, this is in fact in relative sense much bigger. Let's bring up some graphs that we have prepared here that will tell us more interesting stories here. Okay, we are comparing on two dimensions here. GDP size. World GDP is 70 trillion won there. And if you divide by the participating countries' shares here, TPP participants, if you add them up all together, they can account for about 26 trillion won here. And RCEP is the one that China is pushing for, regional cooperation, comprehensive economic partnership agreement, that where Korea is participating at this point, but slightly smaller than that. And NAFTA is smaller than TPP because TPP has its own size. And the TPP itself is even bigger than EU and bigger than anything else. So that's why there is an importance in terms of GDP size of these participating countries. And what's perhaps more important than GDP size itself is the current trade volume. And there, as you can see here, TPP comes right next to EU's trading volume size. And as we have these economies that are growing fast, actually, indeed, the trade volume itself will be something that could be changed quite quickly over time. So, indeed, from these two pie charts, if you will, the importance of TPP itself becomes quite apparent.
Okay, what we love to do here in Korea is always to put two big fighters in a cage and see them duke it out. So let's do the same with RCEP or RCEP and TPP, how do they fare when they go up against each other in terms of the advantages or disadvantages?
It looks like TPP has its own advantages. Let's bring up some numbers on the screen here so that we can have a better understanding here. First of all, RCEP actually has 16 participating countries. As you can see on the upper right-hand side corner there, China is driving it. And the TPP is 12 countries. If Korea decides to participate fully, it's going to be 13 countries being led by the United States leadership here. And world GDP share, because TPP participants have bigger size economies, they account for 38% of the world GDP. That's easily calculated from the previous numbers that we had, as opposed to RCEP members account for 28%, so slightly smaller. We are talking about smaller market here. But in the longer term, one might argue that because the population size of RCEP membership here is much bigger than TPP side, once these economies pick up their speed of growing on the side of RCEP, it could become bigger. That's something that needs to be examined later on as time goes by here. But altogether, right at this point, TPP seems to have a greater advantage here in terms of like a possible gains. And Korea's stance right here at this point is we are participating in RCEP negotiation at this point, while on the TPP side, we have expressed our interest.
Okay. What about the TPP negotiations progression? How far has it gone, and what are some of the, of course, the bumps ahead for TPP?
Actually, there's an interesting rumor. The rumor says as early as like in a few days of time horizon from at this point. They're talking about 7th and 10th of December, possibly the high government officials who will be gathering in Singapore could actually wrap up overall negotiation of TPP. I don't fully buy that rumor, but that's being circulated in the media at this point. So that only shows how fast this TPP negotiation is accelerating, and that's something that we need to take into account for sure. So therefore, it is fast picking up its speed here. That's why Korea really needs to jump into the bandwagon as quickly as possible, especially when we have Japanese participation in mind. So indeed, that seems to be what's happening. And talking about this rumor probably indicates that a lot of details seem to be being ironed out. But as you mentioned, lack of transparency makes us not well informed about the progress of TPP itself. Once Korea participates in the negotiation, probably Korean public will hopefully get to know more details.
Or maybe one or two more countries participating might make it even more difficult for more mouths to complain and slow down the negotiation process. Good point. So maybe we should wait. I don't know how long, but anyway, if we decide to join in the TPP negotiations, I know eventually, inevitably, we got to break a few eggs to make an omelet.
Absolutely.
So what are the expected challenges along the way? First
of all is to deal with the speed. If it's picking up too fast, maybe Korea would join in and try to slow down, try to reflect its factor in its interest as much as it can. That'll be a big challenge if it's picking up a lot of speed. And this is a multilateral, negotiation. A lot of countries are participating, so ironing out differences very fine way to seek our maximum national interest will be a very tough process. And with Japan, Korea has this traditional long-time sensitivity on the auto sector and the electronic sector and the machinery sector. So SMEs in Korea that produces small parts, they have great sensitivity. So that's a very tough issue to work out here domestically as well as at the negotiation. On the US side, some of the media commentators talking about the possible further opening of the beef market. That's always politically sensitive here. And also agriculture in general, because Australia, New Zealand, Canada, that we are talking bilaterally right now for bilateral FTA. They are all in here all together, and their bilateral relation, the negotiation have been slow because of the agricultural issue. But if it's all bundled up within TPP framework, it could be a very challenging issue for Korea to sort out. And China is the last one. Even though China has expressed its interest in TPP still, it's kind of like a standing outside at this moment. So in Korea, keeping the right balance, political as well as economic balance with China will be another very challenging task.
Lots of challenges there, but I know we will be able to swim our way out of this situation and jump into something greater ahead. Well, that's been Dr. Kim Byoung-joo, head of KL&P Consulting, and our go-to commentator here in Arirang TV. Thank you so much for making time for us again.
Thank you.